Can you talk a little bit about, your view of what's been most important in getting quickly to value in terms of the roles and responsibilities that the CIO really needs to, CDO, I'm sorry, needs to be focused on?
Well, look, I have a whole master class on the business outcome data strategy methodology that really is the basis of what I champion more and more these days. And one of the things I've learned in my own journey is the importance of speaking the language of business. And that we as data people, that the value that we can bring to an organization is listening with data ears almost, and understanding those business outcomes in your company, that you cannot achieve those business outcomes without also managing data effectively. And so that translator, that communicator, that operator role is what CDOs need to do. And you see all the surveys, right? All the surveys says that if you focus only on the technology, you're not as successful as those that really are more strategic. But you got to be strategic and operational at the same time, right? You just can't be in a lofty role without then driving actions and results. But they need to be around the business strategy, the business outcome, the business value, and not in our typical data speak. So I really like to champion that business outcome methodology and thinking. And also that we as a profession need to be able to step up and do that kind of communication.
That's very important. What qualifications or key skills do you believe the role of the CDO must have, and why? What would you consider to be the top 3 or 4 critical skills that CDO or senior executive data leader would require to be successful?
Yeah, well, all the surveys tell us, right, that the most successful CDOs have a strategic value-based remit, and that those that are most successful are those that can do that effectively. And so I would say you have to be a strategic thinker. And to me, that means that you can think long term, that you can kind of build out capabilities and think about that North Star that you want to drive. But there's also an innovation component to that. And I think about my own role, about how many times was I in a situation where there had never been precedence for something. And so it's not innovation just from a technical perspective, it's really innovation of thought around this process. What are the things that we need to do to manage data effectively? So you have to have that kind of thinking, but you also have to be an operational person, and that's what I was saying before. Is you have to be able to deliver results, and so you have to have good project management skills. Or if you don't have them, you better go hire them. And the other thing I would say is you have to be a good communicator, and that's one of the things I had to learn myself, because I have written a book and master classes and articles. And the first draft that I did of my book and sent it to my publisher, he's like, "Go back to work. You're trying to sell the hammer, not the nails." And it's made me really think about how to articulate this topic in a way that's more interesting, that's more business speak, and that's an important trait. But I would also say we're translators, and by translators I mean, we listen with data ears, we know the topic, and we bridge sometimes the communication between the business and the technical teams, right? We're that translator in the organization around this topic. So you got to be that. And then, of course, you better be resilient, because you're going to get a lot of no's, and you can't take no for an answer. I always kind of felt like when somebody told me no, they didn't want to do something or they couldn't do it, it really just meant to me, either I got to get better at explaining why, or it means not yet. It's not no, it's not yet, which means I need to come back at you with a better argument. So being resilient is also extremely important.
Yeah, those are really key determinants of success, it sounds like. I want to pivot the conversation a little bit and take it a little bit off of what I thought would be my next question, and ask you to speak a little bit from the perspective of the non-technical, non-data savvy CEO or CMO or FO in the C-suite, who's in a large global organization and really needs to leverage data and analytics to really drive the business, given the strategy the company has, but doesn't really understand what's required to be successful. How does that person really need to sort of start thinking incrementally into this capability as it relates to driving or enabling business strategy success? What would you say there?
Well, this is what I do in my day job now, which is talking to that C-level, non-technical organization about why do they need to manage data differently? What does it really take? And the best way to speak about it is really to start with their own company business outcomes. And I like to go straight to the top, because I think, especially if you're dealing with someone at a very high level in the company, I read their annual report. I will read their 10K. I'll listen to what they're telling investors. And I listen with those data ears to say, what are those really important outcomes that need and materially need data to be managed differently, and what kind of data but then you need someone like myself, and if you're a CEO or CMO, then kind of get that input from people that know. That's why I think my job is really helpful, because sometimes they don't want a consulting firm to come in yet. They just need to get a point of view from someone that's been there and done that before. And so bringing someone that's been there and done that before and listening to that and kind of internalizing it, and then eventually getting to the point where you say, okay, yeah, I think I do need to really think about this topic and hire then someone who's going to build out that program. And then part of the role of that executive, that new executive, that data executive, is to connect the dots, because I find that it's not difficult these days, especially, to have executives understand that managing data is important. That's not the question anymore. 20 years ago, when I was doing this, yeah, you had to spend a lot of time with why was it important. Company executives get that. What they don't know is how and where to get started.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I say you always got to go back to those outcomes that matter, because those are the ones that are going to tell you what you need to do. But being able to then get advice, get knowledgeable. There are seminars like the MIT CDO Symposium. There are people like myself, and there's lots of material out there to just get yourself familiar with the topic, and then get to the point where you feel comfortable enough to hire a head of data.